Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Friday, March 21st, 2025. This is episode 341, and we're going to talk about how Socrates is the original Detective Colombo using the dialogue of Euthyphro. So, Detective Colombo, if you don't know, it was a crime drama series. I thought it was a TV series, but I looked it up, and it turns out that it was more of like uh, a movie special kind of thing. And so there were episodes that stretched over years. But Columbo is a homicide detective his appearance is really unkempt, right? He looks like a slob, like he slept in his car. He wears this oversized beige raincoat. He has got curly hair. He's always scratching his head. He's got a cigar in his hand. And so his appearance looks like that he's a bumbling idiot, right? That he never solved a crime in his life. And so when people look at him, especially the suspects, the people who committed the crime, um, they look at him with looks of scorn and disrespect, right? But one of the trademarks of Columbo is just as he's leaving, he says, "Oh, yeah, just one more thing." And he asks another question. And when he does this, he catches the suspect off guard, right? Because he's an idiot. He's got another question. What is it? They've already underestimated him. Now his questions are making them flustered. And so they make a mistake and they reveal themselves as the guilty party. Columbo himself, he doesn't gloat. It's like, it's no big deal. I'm just asking questions. And so Socrates, who lived between 470 and 399 BCE, kind of has this approach when he does his dialogue. In other words, he's not teaching philosophy, he's just asking questions. And by this question and answer process, you begin to see what the topic is not, right? And so he takes away what something is not, which leaves room for further exploration and and study. So I've used or I've talked about Socrates in episodes 63 and 73 in the past. So I've talked more about the details of Socrates' life there, so I won't do it in this episode. But episodes 63 and 73 talked about this idea of integrity, like how far do you keep and hold to your principles, and also the expert game, right? So a lot of people claiming to be experts, we call them scientists, perhaps, call them doctors or PhDs, right? So they're supposed to be experts and they know more than us, and so they're going to tell us how we're supposed to live our lives, right? So the material that I would read in class, I would also introduce as basically records left behind by his student, Plato. So Socrates himself never really wrote, but he was the main character in all of these dialogues. And it might be assumed that one way of looking at it was that Socrates would have these discussions and Plato recorded the discussions, right? But obviously, he wasn't always following him around. There's no way he could have been in the same place as Socrates when these dialogues took place. And so, what were they? Was it conjecture? Was it written based on eyewitness accounts? Who really knows? And it doesn't really matter because we have the dialogues and we can discuss them. So the dialogues were basically what's called the Socratic Method. And Socratic Method, or the method of Socrates, was just basically asking questions. And based on the answers, now you have more questions. Okay. And so if you know what you're doing, then the questions that you're asking begin to reveal a lot. And so Socrates, in the dialogues, he actually plays the role of Columbo, right? He's, oh, I don't know anything. Please help me. And so the person he's talking with gets all excited, right? It's like, oh, I get to teach Socrates something. But of course, in the process, reveal that they know very little. Now, this whole question process that Socrates engages in reminds me of my own deconstruction. And I often wonder if my whole deconstruction approach that I introduced in episode 4 to 8 is not somehow based on this memory of having read Socrates way back in the day when I was an undergrad. So here it is. This is the dialogue of Euthyphro, and you can find summaries of the dialogue, very detailed summaries of Euthyphro online. So I won't go into too much depth here. And the dialogue itself is really not that long, uh, so you can read it yourself. So Euthyphro, they're looking for a definition of piety or holiness. Okay. And so basically, Euthyphro is in line to go to court. So is Socrates. Socrates is about to be sentenced to death, but he's saying, hey, they're going to accuse me of impiety. So I got to know what piety is all about. And Euthyphro says, hey, I can tell you what piety is. And so Socrates is like, wonderful, that's great. You can tell me what it is. Maybe it will help me in court. And maybe it's a foreshadowing of the fact that no, it's not going to help him. So Euthyphro, so Socrates says, okay, so tell me, what are you here for? And Euthyphro is about to accuse his dad of murder. And so the situation was that one of the servants murdered a slave, and so the servant was thrown into a pit. And while they were waiting to figure out what to do with him, he died. And so the son was like, hey, aren't we going to do anything about the fact that this guy died in a pit? Right. And keep in mind, there were no sheriffs, there was no police back in the day. And so individuals would have to figure out where to hold people who committed crime. And then the judgment would have to come from the oracle at Delphi. And so they were waiting for the response from the oracle, but he had died. And so no one else really seemed to care because he was a murderer anyway, and the person he killed was beloved by everybody. But the son was like, no, no, this was unjust. So you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to accuse dad of murder. We would call this virtue signaling today, okay? Uh, or basically saying, look, I'm so holy, I'm so righteous, I'm going to do the right thing, no matter how harmful it is, right? And no matter how uh, I I misunderstand things, I'm just going to basically show people how awesome I am, so that you recognize how awesome I am. And so Socrates like, wow, that's interesting. Well, but so tell me what holiness is. And so Euthyphro first says, hey, holy is what I'm doing, right? And so Socrates says, no, 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 don't give me examples, give me a definition. And so he says, well, whatever is pleasing to the gods is holy, and what is not holy is not pleasing to the gods. And so Socrates says, but the gods, they argue with each other, so perhaps they disagree. And then and Euthyphro is stumped. So Socrates says, well, how about if we say what all the gods hate is unjust and is unholy? So therefore, what all the gods love, right? Because they're not arguing about it anymore, that's holy. And they're like, oh, okay, that sounds good. Euthyphro says, that sounds good. And he says, is what is holy holy because the gods approve it, or they approve it because it's holy? And Euthyphro says, oh, the gods love it because it's holy, which is a misstep. Socrates says, well, okay, so what's pleasing to the gods? Is it gods love it because it's pleasing to them? So holy and pleasing are supposed to be different things, but then it seems that they are the same, right? And so Euthyphro gets stumped, right? Because what's pleasing and holier, right? Holy is not pleasing, right? Pleasure is not what is holy, right? Because holy is somehow supposed to be sacred. It can't be pleasing. Ew, that's no, that's wrong. So Euthyphro is stumped. And so Socrates says, oh, well, okay, so forget about the gods. Just tell me what the essential attribute of holy is. And then he gets really upset. He says, you're like Daedalus. And Daedalus made statues that came to life and started moving around. And so basically, he's accusing Euthyphro of moving the goalposts, sort of like the CDC or when people change the definitions in the dictionary, right? They're changing the goalposts, they're changing the understanding, they're changing the definition. So Socrates then offers what is holy is just. But then he says, is everything that's just holy? Right? Is one the subset of the other? And so Euthyphro says, holiness is a subset of justice. Oh, okay. Well, then justice is in service to the gods. So justice in service to the gods is holy, and justice in service of humanity is not holy, right? And so you can begin to see that Socrates is uh, playing on the assumed definition of justice, right? And then confusing Euthyphro even more. So then he says, okay, so we're going to say service to the gods. So is that like servicing horses and dogs? And at this point, he's toying with Euthyphro. And so people make gods better, like we're servicing the gods, and so we're making them better. And so Euthyphro says, well, no, it's more like waiting on them, like soldiers and generals. By serving, there's victory. So serving the gods, what does it produce? And then again, what is holiness? Is it science of prayer and sacrifice, giving and receiving? Right. So is it a transactional commercial relationship? Right. And so how do the gods gain from what the people give them? And so then it comes back to what pleases the gods. And then pleasing is not supposed to be the same as holy. So that can't be right. And Euthyphro just gets so frustrated, he just storms off. He probably doesn't pursue the case because clearly he doesn't know what piety or holiness is. And so that basically is the dialogue where Socrates tries to bring out a lot of the prevalent understanding of what is holy and basically undermine the confidence of people who claim to be holy. All right. So Euthyphro's problem is that he didn't think it through, right? He was so eager to show his own righteousness, like, oh, I'm so holy, look at me, I'm going to accuse dad of murder, right? But he didn't even really ask the question, did the guy deserve to die, right? The murderer who died in the pit, right? And so therefore is uh, letting a murderer die, is that murder as well? Is killing a murderer not holy? Hmm. So it's sort of like today with all the Tesla vandalism. Did you think it through? I saw a article or oh, I think it was Decoy Voice said that because vandalism is right in this particular case is terrorism, which is punishable to 20 years in prison. Again, I think that's problematic because, and that's why I don't think, I talked about hate crime not too long ago. Vandalism is vandalism, man. If you want to turn it into terrorism, well, okay, this is why we're not supposed to do this in the first place. Now you're going to take vandalism and elevate it to a totally different level. Teslas are expensive to begin with, and so just penalizing people fines would be nice, right? Taking into consideration also the carbon output from burning them all, that should also be considered as well. But that's Euthyphro's problem. He doesn't think it through. He has this very superficial understanding of what is holy and then acts on it. And then potentially, he's stopped by Socrates in this case, but potentially could have created massive harm in his own family by having his father arrested, perhaps even dying in prison. Uh, but he's so focused on getting brownie points for himself that he doesn't think that far. Uh, so one has to ask, is there a limit to virtue signaling, all this activity that we see here today? I mean, is there a limit? Oh, yeah, there is a limit. Not only are these guys a bunch of hypocrites, right, but they are going and violating every other principle that they claim that they had, especially in regard to climate change. And so basically, another lesson that we can learn is, why do people engage in this kind of hypocritical behavior? Why do people, you know, so easily make mistakes like burning Teslas or vandalizing Teslas and even dealerships? You know, how do they get to the point where this is the right way to respond to a perceived problem? And basically, it's superficial thinking. Part of it also is this this inability to even think. Uh, they're unable to process information independently. They need instructions. They need someone to tell them what to do. And this is clearly a person who lacks principles, right? A principle like, oh, I shouldn't damage other people's stuff because if everyone was allowed to damage other people's stuff, then what if someone came and burned down my house? No, this is not cool, so therefore I should not do it, right? If you have this principle of even respect for other people's property, then you wouldn't be able to go through it. But if your principle is, oh, I can burn down stuff, well, the principle is that, well, anyone can burn anyone's stuff at any time, and pretty soon, well, everything is burning. This is also not good for society. But all of these people who are engaging in this vandalism, they're focused on an issue. There is no memory of the past. There's no memory of the fact that Elon Musk used to be the darling of the left because of all this so-called green stuff that he's doing. And so now, because they're issue based, they have no memory of what happened in the past, of even what they did in the past. All that matters now is that apparently he's a Nazi. But if you focus only on an issue, you will never come to the appropriate solution or the right answer to a problem. And so Euthyphro, you know, is asked questions. He has no answers, and that's what the reason why he storms off. He realizes himself he knows nothing. And so this process of just simply asking, right, will reveal who the guilty parties really are, right? And so all of us, that's what we have to do every day in our lives. We have to be our own Columbo, asking ourselves questions to challenge what we think is the right way to act. Is this the appropriate way to respond? Is this okay what I'm doing, right? So you ask yourself, and then you ask questions of the person who's telling you that these are the good things to do. Ask them why they think that it's a good thing, because they said so. If that's the answer you get, then likely that person never thought of it either. And so we have to continually ask questions like Colombo, like Socrates, as in deconstruction, to protect ourselves, right? So a lot of people think that they're protecting themselves by burning all these Teslas, but are they really? No, they're not. If anything, they're destroy. They're, it's not a big step from burning down Teslas to starting to burn down cities, which is what they did during the BLM riots, right? So uh, if people just stopped and asked questions, then most of the people there probably would not have done much of anything. But the fact that they are not asking questions leads to this kind of behavior. So be more like Columbo, be more like Socrates, and perhaps more people will be able to dig themselves out of that pit of ignorance. Yes, I realize that most people who are doing these things are irrational. They will not listen to anything. But hopefully, if you find yourself in a situation where you're confronted and you have very little knowledge of what's going on, play the Columbo. Oh, really? Wow. Can you teach me on this? And you just ask questions, right? And pretty soon the person will, they themselves will get frustrated. And then you can say, whoa, 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 hey, I don't know anything. I'm just asking you because I'm trying to understand here. Why are you getting mad, right? And so you take that approach, which is in fact the approach that I use all of the time, especially when I'm in a hostile uh, conversation, right? And it this is also how you're able to control yourself, anger management, if you will, right? You play the role of the idiot, of the dumb person who knows nothing, and you say, "You're so awesome." So I tell me everything that I need to know, but you keep pressing them with questions, and you'll see their exuberance, their excitement that, ooh, I get to, this person's curious. I'm going to teach this person something. And eventually that arrogance is going to trip them up. And hopefully you'll be able to help that person to begin the journey to get out of that pit of ignorance. That's it for this episode. I managed to get it around the 20-minute mark. Yay, me. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next time.